today I have the pleasure of interviewing really one of Miami's finest in Manny Medina. Manny has been a major philanthropist around campus, around town. Also has developed the eMERGE program with Melissa, his daughter, which is bringing top quality technology. He's the founder of many things, including Medina Capital, which was investing early in technology, Terramark, which wound up being sold to Verizon, and then Sixtera, which now is doing wonderful things in the security space. Manny, when I ask you these questions, we really almost, it's a humbling experience, but the first question I want to know is, what is something that you've overcome in your life that continues to motivate you, a difficult problem?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here talking to you and your audience. The most, I think I was thinking, the most difficult thing that I've overcome in my life, I've had many challenges, but the most difficult one was really making it out of my teen years. I mean, I think, arriving in this country as a 13-year-old refugee, not speaking English, and Miami was a very difficult place at the time. Just really making it out, kind of those 13 to 18 years old, got in a lot of trouble. It was just a very difficult time. And I think overcoming that period was an immense challenge that I continue to go back, and everything else that happens in my life never measures up to how difficult it was and how I barely almost didn't make it out of that period. So that was, that's probably the number one thing if I had to choose one.
What motivates you? What gets you out of bed? Because sometimes I've heard you speak and it's almost coach speak in that there's so much positivity, but with a lot of hard work behind it.
Well, look, I think it's two sides of a coin, right? First, I love to create and I love to come up with all these grand ideas. They first became, they were just dreams, and then eventually some become reality. And what happens is when you do that and you create this incredible challenges are overcome, but at the same time, you help a lot of people and a lot of institutions. So by choice, number one is I am really motivated by the game, if you will, if you want to call it the game, not different than anybody else, right? And people ask me why do I retire? Why? And I don't know, because I'm not really working, right? I'm doing what I love to do, which is create and and doing all these things. And on the flip side of that is that then I love to give, and I think in understanding the impact that we have been blessed to have on a number of institutions and schools and the ocean, which is a passion of mine with Aquarius for FIU and creating the seed school. And so creating and then giving and helping as many people as I can. That really is my motivation. And I don't know, I think I'll be doing it until I die.
So the next question I've asked a lot of people, which is, what would you tell your 8-year-old self? And even with your early answer to the first question, I realized your 8-year-old self was back in Cuba. And yeah. So what would you tell your 8-year-old self, knowing where you are now with so much success?
Oh, listen, it will be an easy one. Learn English. I would definitely tell that 8-year-old kid, learn English, because my life would have been totally different had I known English when I arrived here. So, easy one.
So there have been so many changes over this last year. You and I had the pleasure of talking back a few weeks ago, and talking about how this year has been really difficult for some, and others, the opportunities that might have taken decades to move ahead have done that. Today, I was vaccinated, and I kept thinking about it, and to think that we could come up with a vaccine, and yes, we've spent billions of dollars, but looking at the bright side, how that's going to change biotech, how we're going to know in the future, cancers, other things that we can get after with the right focused attention and intention. And it made me think of you when I saw my schedule for today, because you've done things on the technology side that we didn't even know were possible in the past. How has that this year, if we look at the positive of this year in terms of speed to market, new addressable markets, new product offerings, how do you see that changing opportunities your grandchildren are going to have?
Well, look, I think you put it very well. I think the fact that all of these major events like the pandemic what they do is they accelerate changes that were already happening, right? I mean, those changes were not, I mean, like this remote, what we're doing right now, this remote working, the great thing was that the technology was there for us to be able to do it. And I think that acceleration has created an incredible acceleration of productivity, right? And basically, and look, there's going to be fundamental changes. There's going to be a lot of big losers and a lot of big winners, right? I mean, so as we look forward, I think it's phenomenal. The fact that what is really phenomenal is how well it's worked. I mean, if you think about this work from home and this et cetera, which it's really creating a lot of what you talk about, creating the vaccine and creating and doing deals and closing fantastic deals and selling, it's all being done virtually with people not meeting each other, right? And thinking about the product, thinking about being able to bring the world to you without having to get on a plane, and the logistics and everything else and how quickly it is. It's happening in our business at the speed of, literally at the speed of light, right? So basically, I think it's going to have a very phenomenal, long term, it's going to have a very phenomenal impact. And I think the fact of being able to produce a vaccine in a matter of less than a year, and doing all that, it just exemplifies exactly this point, right? That basically everybody coming together quickly at the speed of light, exchanging ideas, etc., and that's going to have a pronounced impact, right, in us moving forward. And look, I recommend to all of your young audience or anybody else who's listening to this. There's a book that I always recommend, which is I'm a great admirer of Dr. Peter Diamandis, who he has founded many things, including Singularity University, the SpaceX, and he wrote a book a few years ago called Abundance. And the gist of the book is, if you go through life, and he goes back starting in the Middle Ages up until very recent, there's no problem that doesn't have a solution. The solution has just not been invented yet. And he makes some very incredible examples, and this is a perfect example, right? So I believe, that technology, biotech, but technology particularly, will just continue to accelerate at a much faster pace because of pandemic.
Do you think we're also, it makes us very introspective. Obviously, we've had quite a year on the social justice side. One of the things I asked Coach Larinaga when I interviewed him was, are we going to come out of this with less patience? So, I look at you and I hear your excitement about the deal closings at the end of the year and what's going on, but it's years in the making, right? You look at a company, you figure it out, then all of a sudden you take such pride in the jobs you've created. How, when you're talking to people that are 15, 16, 17, 18 years old and can get an answer to a question as quickly as their thumbs can type, how do you explain to them the grind, as they call it?
Yeah, look, I think they, particularly athletes, know the grind, right? Because without the grind, you're never going to succeed. You might divert and have a little fun. You have too much fun, you're not going to succeed. I don't care who you are, right? I mean, the days of Babe Ruth are over, right? So basically, that. So I think that the grind, as at the end of the day, it's and you've heard me say it, and success is really, a big part of it is really, that ability for you to be able to focus and be disciplined. And I think that when you have those 14, 15, 16-year-olds, I always tell when I speak to kids that they have to look at themselves as a brand. Basically, if you think about it, why do I go to you when I break a bones? Unfortunately, I broke one not that long ago that you fixed for me. Why do I go to you, Lee? Because I trust you, right? And therefore, that is because you, the Dr. Lee Kaplan brand, is something that everybody goes to. How long has it taken you to get that brand together? From the early years, from the very beginning. What I tell them is, if you think from at that age, why do opportunities come to people? Because they trust them. So you have a positive attitude. You begin creating your brand, right? And that brand stays with you for your entire life. You're going to have ups and downs and sideways, and a lot of things are going to happen, but the brand stays intact because you're true to your word, and you et cetera. And that's really the most important thing. That grind that you call is really building your brand. And that brand, eventually you can do with it whatever you want, right? You can work more, you can work less, etc. But it gives you that opportunity because of the brand that you've created. And I also tell them it's very simple to tarnish it. Very difficult to get there, very simple to tarnish it, right? And very difficult to then redo it again. So basically, that's what I think about it. And so that part of that question is that it's a bigger question. Is how do you create your own brand and make sure that you're very very careful in guarding and creating it. So I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Makes perfect sense, and I think it will to them as well. They they know marketing better than most with social media. So one of the things that we often talk about, last year we had almost 400 young student athletes, high school students, at the event. And one of the things that's often said, at times the rest of the country doesn't love Miami, right? We're different, we look different, we feel different. I laugh when people talk about ethnicity. Just come here. I mean, we're everything. And even if you think somebody's not, they're a blend of something if they wind up in Miami. So your experience of coming here is a story that's been repeated many times. It's been repeated by Nicaraguans, Venezuelans recently. Many cultures have come here, when their own political situations at home are bad. If Can you elaborate just a little bit more on that connectivity of where you are successfully now with showing up in Dade County at 13 years old when Dade County was part of the South, right? It wasn't what it is today. And how you use those motivations and that chip to get you forward instead of letting it burn you up and using it as an excuse.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was lucky that I had parents that that sacrificed themselves and worked their behinds off at that age. But I think the Miami question itself, Miami today is a great asset. I mean, in the sense of you as a young person, if you want to get ahead, and I know there's many Miamis, right? There's the Miami that people don't want to talk about, but even those kids, which is where the biggest impact happens. You come out today. Miami is a city that is very accommodating and acceptance. It's very accepting. I mean, I have had the pleasure and the opportunity to do a lot of business still currently in Silicon Valley. It's very difficult for you to get ahead in Silicon Valley, believe it or not. I know the allure of Silicon Valley is there, but the reality is that Silicon Valley is much more difficult. It's much more, I don't want to use the word prejudice, but it's just more difficult for you to break into. In Miami, it's very accepting, and I think having that melting pot, if you have a great idea, if you really work hard, you create that brand, you're going to succeed. If you have that great idea, I don't know one great idea that has not gotten funded in Miami, right? So I think that the question is two parts, basically. So Miami, I think it's a great asset, will continue to be. Now it's accelerating. Now you're having this great migration. It's really funny because the migration was mostly from south to north. It's not from north to south, right? I mean, everybody's coming down to us today, and I'm thinking across the entire spectrum of the economic class. So I think that as a young person that is going through a lot of difficulties, once you get out, and this is one of the greatest things that we did in the seed school is exactly that, taking young kids out of these very difficult neighborhoods, putting them in the best environment, which is a boarding school, if you will, for lack of a better description. It is a boarding school. And then when you come out, you're out in an environment and in society that is accepting of you. You don't have to then say, hey, wait a minute, I don't have this profile, so I'm never going to be accepting. So I think it's a great advantage for you. And it doesn't matter, here, to your point, whether you're Cuban, Nicaraguan, Black, Chinese, it doesn't matter whether whatever your color or your background is, it's really who you are. And I think that we're very fortunate to live in a community that is the case, right? As we've seen recently in the last elections, that's not the case in many communities around the country. And being in a community like ours, I think is a great advantage.
Yeah, the other thing is we have such great role models, you and many people who've come from the islands, who've come from South America, who've come from Russia, that have become, successful kind of with the opportunities through education and other things in America. So, you know, many people will watch this. We're all really thankful for everything you do for our community. I was telling Melissa when I saw her recently that You know, we're all disappointed that the spring won't have it, but we're looking forward to the next emerge. And I can only imagine the opening party you're going to throw.
I'm telling you, physical parties are long overdue. That's one thing that virtual technology cannot do for us, right?
You know, I was reading something and they were saying that for a long time, historians have wondered why there was such enthusiasm for the Roaring Twenties and music and fashion and everything that went on. And now I think we all understand it's a
I
lot of
know that's post pandemic, you know, but even though they were a tad less careful in 17 than they were in 20. So, all
exactly,
right. Thank
exactly.
you very
Thank you
much.
very
Good
much.
luck.
Have a great day. Take care.
Honored to be here. Take care. Thanks.